Alderville, Scugog Island, Rama, Beausoleil, and Georgina Island First Nations. We offer our gratitude to First Nations peoples for their care of the land and their teachings about this area we call home. We recognize the colonial history of Peterborough Nogadjiwanong and our responsibility to take steps to change our attitudes and actions based on that understanding. We've chosen this picture on the slide. It shows a local fall scene with trees on either side of a country road. If the trees represent the land, the road could represent the way colonialism has separated the First Nations who lived here. And at the foundation, we've taken steps to learn more about the impact our settlers have had on this land, especially at the board and the organization itself. For those new to the work of the Community Foundation, we work with donors and the local charitable sector to help create a vital community for everyone. Thanks to the caring people in Peterborough, the Community Foundation stewards over $12 million in assets across almost 100 different funds that will benefit the community for years to come. Today's grants come from 15 of those funds. I would like to thank everyone who's contributed to the funds shown on the slide, and I'm going to go through the names just quickly. The 2040 Fund, the Elmira Grover Foley Fund, the Arts and Culture Fund, the Brian and Lynn Kelly Family Fund, the COVID-19 Community Response Fund, the David and Enid Mitchell Fund, the Hall Pike Fund, the Housing Fund, the Jack and Pat Bingelman Fund, the Cameron Fund, the Martin and Denise Pick Fund, the Mayor Bennett Fund, the Pilkington Henninger Fund, the Simon Says Fund, and the Vital Community Fund. Gifts to these funds come in all sizes, both large and small, and we would not be here today without the incredible generosity of everyone who has donated to these funds, so thank you. Today is National Philanthropy Day, a day that highlights the importance of working together for the common good. Our slide shows a collage of 8 images showing people involved in local charities, talking, smiling, riding bikes around the community. Really, it's just how we all come together. So on this day, I want to especially thank the 9 organizations receiving grants and who will put these vital community grants to work for good in our community. As we know, the charitable sector is facing a challenging time with increased demands for services and strained resources, but the passion for the people you serve and your resilience inspires us every day and the donors of Peterborough. I will now introduce Jennifer Debuse, our incredible executive director, who will tell us a bit more about this year's Vital Community Grants.
Thanks, Jen. And thank you everyone for coming to celebrate the organizations receiving grants today or for watching the recording of this after the fact. We think we're going to be having a conversation with some of the grant recipients. So you'll have the opportunity to learn a little bit more about the challenges they're facing and importantly, to hear where they see the hope lies for tomorrow. Submitting grant applications takes time and energy. I am always so impressed by the effort charities put into seeking grants. It is very humbling. And as a funder, it is hard running an open application process, knowing that there isn't enough money to meet all the needs and that some applicants are going to be disappointed. We had a big increase in applications this year, so members of last year's granting circle who are not applying for funding this year and other volunteers from the community helped with the difficult shortlisting process, and my thanks go to them for their time and insight. 9 organizations were shortlisted and they are each receiving a Vital Community Grant today. So congratulations and thanks to all of these amazing organizations shown on the slide. I'm full of gratitude for ArtSpace, the Down Syndrome Association of Peterborough, Heads Up for Inclusion, Peterborough AIDS Resource Network, Reframe Film Festival, Right to Heal, the Council for Persons with Disabilities, Elizabeth Fry Society, and YWCA Peterborough Haliburton. So feel free to use your reaction buttons to show them some love or put something in the chat or just clap on screen because we really are very grateful for everything you are doing. These charities serve a wide range of people in our community, from children and youth to people living with disabilities and Indigenous people and people suffering from mental health and addiction issues. They help all of us and they help people with specific needs and so in some ways they're very different from each other, but one thing that they all have in common is that they all foster that essential human connection that we all need, and really a sense of belonging is core to how they operate. So we all came together in a participatory grant-making circle, and there's a screenshot from one of our meetings. Participatory grant-making is an approach that centers the people receiving the grants in the decision-making process. It is a practice that is happening around the world as foundations and philanthropists try to figure out how to address power imbalances between them and the people and organizations they support. We've been practicing this approach for the past 4 years and deepening our understanding of it as we go. The Community Foundation is here to build a vital community for everyone. Our mandate includes all people who live in the city and county of Peterborough, and so it makes sense to include the voices of those affected by our funding choices in the decision-making conversation. Nothing about us without us is the principle underlying participatory grant-making. It's a practice that aligns perfectly with the Foundation's values of community, collaboration, inclusivity, and trust. The 9 organizations receiving these grants met as a granting circle 3 times to decide how they were going to decide, to learn about the work each organization does and about the people they serve, to think about issues of equity and inclusion, and to have some tough conversations about how to share a finite pool of funds. There are many different ways of doing participatory grant making. It's not easy, and no 2 granting circles are the same. I would also say the same can be said of any traditional grant review panel, but with a granting circle, participants are at the table and have a say in the outcome of the process. The slide currently on the screen shares some quotes from the participants. One described, this came in, they did a survey at the end of the process that they provided these anonymous quotes. One described the granting circle as an opportunity to learn more about others' organizations and establish connections which can lead to collaboration. And we certainly find that that learning angle is super important to us. Another said that about their experience, let's be honest, it's uncomfortable. It's difficult to assess the work of another organization. It also forces us to take a deep look at our organization and weigh our worthiness up against others. So that speaks to the soul-searching work and some of the emotional toughness that happens in a granting circle. Another participant summed up by saying, this was a community building, sector strengthening, humanizing practice. And that really speaks to the positive moments that we all experienced in the granting circle. My thanks go to all nine of you, and some of them are in the room, not in the panel, just in the audience, and some are joining us as a part of a panel conversation today. My colleague Caitlin James, who recently joined our staff, she's going to help facilitate that conversation. And Caitlin has a unique perspective in that she was a member of the granting circle as a representative of One City Peterborough this time last year. So I would like to welcome the 4 panelists who are grant recipients to our panel. We have a few questions for each of you, but it's pretty open-ended, and just so the audience knows, nothing's scripted, but we don't know what they're going to say, so we're going to enjoy the conversation. But we hope it gives you a flavor of the needs and strengths of the organizations receiving grants, who I think are fairly representative of a cross-section of the community as a whole. We'll probably talk for about 20 minutes or so, and there'll be time for questions at the end. So panelists, if you get ready to unmute yourselves, I'm going to ask you, each of you, to introduce yourselves, the charity you work for, and say a little bit about the work your organization does for the sake of our audience who may not know your organization, and a little bit about the people you serve. And we'll go in alphabetical order. So Akanksha, Jason, Liz, and Tina. So Akanksha, you get to go first.
Thank you, Jennifer. My name is Akanksha, and I'm the lead supportive counselor and coordinator of community programs at the Elizabeth Rice Society of Peterborough. We provide gender responsive community supports to people who have been or are at risk of criminalization due to poverty, violence, homelessness, substance use, mental health concerns, and violence. I don't know if I already said that. I apologize. I'm a little anxious. And we have quite a few different programs. I'm not going to go into too much detail into all of them. We have a housing program, a peer support program, community program. We have the Justice Services program, which covers court and bail. And we try to find alternatives to incarceration and just walk people through the criminal justice system while also focusing on their other needs and trying to find a more holistic, trying to have a more holistic approach to just improving their quality of life.
Thanks, Akanksha. Jason?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jason King. I'm the Marketing and Programming Assistant with the Council for Persons with Disabilities. Our organization is dedicated to creating a community where everyone can live, learn, work, and play in equality. Primarily, we do a lot of educational work around accessibility and inclusion. Many of you may have heard of our Time in My Shoes program, which is our signature program. We do first-person site evaluations, accessible documents and website evaluations. We do some labeling services locally, and we have an Active Together program, which actually encourages people with disabilities to get out and enjoy the community and be more active. We're unique in the sense that many of our volunteers are people with lived experience, and that we are actively recruiting people with disabilities to be part of that volunteer pool. And it's our goal to just create an accessible and inclusive community that everyone can enjoy.
Thanks. And if you really want your website to go through the ringer, just call Jason. He'll really put you on the right path. Liz?
My name is Liz Shaughnessy, and I'm here on behalf of Right to Heal Peterborough. We received funding in January to help with outpatient addiction treatment locally in Peterborough. So our focus is on treatment and moving our clients from recovery towards wellness. In the process of this pilot project, we recognized a gap in services in our community, and that was a recovery space for those people who are looking to move beyond recovery towards wellness. So in the process, we developed this community space that is unfunded. We were told about this vital community grant, and we applied, and yeah, we're really excited just to be here today. We've never been a part of something like this. So thank you, Jennifer and Caitlin.
Thank you for joining us right off the bat. It's great to have Right to Heal at the table. And Tina.
Thank you. My name is Tina Thornton. I'm the Director of Philanthropy for the YWCA Peterborough Haliburton. We primarily provide supportive services for women and gender diverse people who are fleeing domestic violence. Traditionally, we provide wraparound programming model called, we like to refer to it as the journey of care, which supports our clients from the moment that they make that first call to us for support until they are thriving on the path of their choosing. And so that programming model consists of 5 or 6 programs, depending on the path that they choose, which supports them in both family court support. The START program provides them with access to services outside of our boundaries to assist them with housing, financial supports, etc. And we also have programming to support their educational desires should they choose to want to go back to school. We also provide transitional housing for them when they're ready to make that second step. And so when I talk about our wraparound support model, that's what I mean, supporting a woman on their journey. Thank you.
Thanks, Tina. So you can see just from these 4 organizations, never mind the other 5, there's such a range, and how the challenge of getting 9 really worthwhile organizations all in the room and having to share this finite pot of money, it is a challenge. And to think that there were others that just as worthy that weren't part of the process is one of those things that always strikes my heart very hard. So, but glad to have everybody here. One way we've been framing our grants over the past few years has been to try to look at things with an equity lens. And one of the things that we do to try to at least give us all a similar frame of reference in our conversations is to talk about what is equity. And we've used this picture the past couple of years. And I'll just walk through the description of the picture. On the far left, there's a representation of what reality looks like. There's a tall guy standing on 4 boxes, a medium height guy standing on 1 box, and a little guy who's standing in a hole. And when you think about our society, our community, and even the different organizations within organizations, you can see that example of that, it's a visual metaphor of reality holds true. If we were to take an equality approach to our granting, we would give everybody the same size grant. And but you can see in this picture, the tall guy he's looking at a baseball game. He's able to see easily. The medium guy can see the same as he was in the reality situation. But the little guy who was in the hole before, even though he's been given this box, he still can't see over the fence to see what's going on. In the next frame of the picture, it says equity is the caption. And the tall guy can see over the fence with no boxes. The medium-sized guy, he's still seeing over the fence just fine with 1 box. But the equity angle has been taken, and the little guy that was in the hole has 2 boxes now, and he can finally see over the fence. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about equity. And the dream a lot of people have is the justice side of things, where there's no fence and nobody needs any boxes. Everybody can just get access to whatever it is that they want. The baseball game is just a metaphor. So that, we talk about that at the beginning of our granting circle, just to kind of share our observations and thoughts and give us a common framework for our conversation. But it's kind of the theory. What does it actually look like in practice? And we spent a bit of time. I think the next slide shares some of the words that people use to describe what equity looks like in their organization. And we had everything from equity looks like freedom, equity is safety, equity is messy and exciting. So there's all sorts of little words used to describe it. In the applications, people are a bit more full in their descriptions of what equity means to their organization. Heads Up for Inclusion said that they believe that involving those directly affected by our initiatives ensures that our efforts are relevant, responsive, and truly aligned with the needs and aspirations of the people we serve. Harn's description of equity centers on their peer support team, which is building trust and understanding in the community. And because they are trusted by marginalized people, Harn is able to assist people to engage with doctors and get medical treatment, for example. So they see equity as a bridge to healing and unity in the community. Reframe Film Festival demonstrates their commitment to equity through their values, including providing an accessible festival experience by removing physical, social, and economic barriers to participation, fostering dialogue around issues of social justice, human rights, and environmental responsibility, and using decision-making processes that are inclusive and guided by principles of anti-oppression. So when you hear for those 3 organizations that aren't able to be on the panel today, just their descriptions of equity, you start to get a flavor of what an equity lens means within the confines of a granting circle. So I do acknowledge that working to advance equity is messy. We're certainly learning as an organization all the time, and there's so much more work to be done, and we appreciate all the learning that has been shared through this activity itself. I'm going to turn this over to Caitlin now, I think, to start engaging a little bit more and hearing from the voices of our panelists themselves. So over to you, Caitlin.
Thank you, Jennifer. And like you said, being a part of the granting circle last year as a participant and then this year as a facilitator, I really noticed a lot of commonalities and also some differences too. So one of the differences that stood out from this year was the emphasis on inclusion. Each of the 9 organizations receiving the grants named inclusion as central to their work. However, it does look different for each organization. So in their application, the Down Syndrome Association wrote that they seek to promote connection, inclusion, life skills, education, healthy lifestyles, and socialization as they work towards greater inclusion in our city. Leslie from Art Space, who was also part of the granting circle, wrote about inclusion at the board level, explaining that the diversity they have at their board is a result of intentional recruitment efforts. And they are working to make Art Space a more accessible and safe place, specifically for people who are racialized, disabled, and identify as 2S LGBTQIA+. So those are a couple of the examples. And Jason, who's one of our panelists today, Jason, would you be willing to share a bit more about what inclusion looks like at the Council for Persons with Disabilities?
Absolutely. So inclusion is kind of our meat and potatoes, to be entirely honest. Many people have taken part in our Time in My Shoes program and have experienced what it's like to be included through the experiential learning process. And what's unique about that is our facilitators are all people with lived experience who talk about their disabilities and allow you to experience it through, different types of simulations like wheelchairs. So we're including the able-bodied community in our world by, giving them the chance to experience disability and understand the challenges behind it. But one of the things that we often talk about, and you may not think about it as a accessibility related thing, is the inclusion for everybody. We talk about barrier removal. Things like language barriers become a challenge. We have a very, very rich cultural community right now with a number of variety of students in that coming to study in Peterborough and coming from different cultural backgrounds, but many of them are coming from an English as a second language base, and that creates challenges in terms of communication. We talk about barriers to employment, and that's not just persons with disabilities, it's barriers like ageism, youth, inexperience, training. The cost of living has been a barrier. So when we do a lot of our training and a lot of our educational work, we talk about these barriers and show how by creating a universal community and a universal design around accessibility and inclusion, everyone benefits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well said. Thank you, Jason. And the conversation that we had during the granting circle around inclusion was really rich. Would any of the other panelists here like to add anything to what Jason just said? Well, that's no problem. We'll move along and talk about the process a little bit more now. So as Jennifer mentioned, the goal of participatory grant making is to shift power. And this process can be both challenging, as we've heard, but also very rewarding. So for all of the grant recipients that were part of the process this year, it was their first time being part of a granting circle. So a lot of the words people threw out as we went into the meeting were nervous, excited, quite a range of feelings and emotions. Liz, I'm wondering if you could share about your particular experience with the process.
Yeah, like Caitlin just mentioned, this was my first time participating in a granting circle, so I had no idea of what to expect. So walking into it, you're a little nervous because you feel like you almost have to explain why you're more worthy than another agency to receive the funds. So you kind of go in there thinking that we're going to be battling for this money. And in fact, it wasn't like that at all. So I think that first activity we did kind of lightened the load because we realized that we were all here for the same reason, which was to help our own community, because we all do service very specific sectors, and there's a lot of room. We learned through this process that there's a lot more room for collaboration. I've connected with quite a few of the agencies after our last meeting. And so I feel like the system kind of divides us in the funding model where we're all applying for similar funding and we're hoping that we get it. So it's very like, cutthroat fighting for things. Whereas I feel like this really gave us, it was less about that. And it was more about giving us the space to connect, be heard. I feel like in a safe way, we had the power to speak our truth. And everybody was so supportive throughout the process that after the first session, which was beautifully run by Jennifer and Caitlin, I walked away feeling very hopeful. I looked forward to the next meeting where we were going to learn about everybody and what our services, who we service in the community. So I feel like rather than feeling stressed out during the process, I walked away feeling very hopeful and excited for the next time we came together. So I do want to thank I want to thank this Vital Community Fund for giving us a space to be able to be heard, because that is not usually something that exists within the funding models that are out there. So I really enjoyed my time with all the other agencies at the table.
Thank you, Liz. Yeah, it's true. There was so much generosity in the room. And I think one person used the word open-hearted, which I think captures it well. Would anyone else like to add something about their experience with the process of the granting circle?
I would, if that's okay. Like Liz said, I was also extremely anxious when I first came in because I hadn't done this before. I've been in the field only for about 6 months now, and I did know a lot of people. And I absolutely love the process, and more than the money and the monetary side of it, just making those personal connections with people in other agencies, learning about their services. And I know that especially all of the agencies that were on the in the circle, they keep upgrading their services, they keep developing new programs, and I loved hearing about all of it, and also hearing about the challenges that they're facing. And it was a great way to connect with people. And I think that because we all do such different things, we don't often come together to sit and talk about what we do, and sit and talk about how we can collaborate and how we can bring our services together. And I think that this was a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to do that. So thank you.
Thank you, Akanksha, for sharing that. I can, as being a participant last year, I can resonate with you for sure. Anyone else before we move on to the next question here? Vanessa, yeah, jump in.
I'm going to apologize first. I have bronchitis, so voice is not quite there. But I was, as many of you probably remember, very emotional during it. I was just so filled with gratitude. And of course, on the last day when I had to be pulled away unexpectedly to pick up my son, I came back to see that the amount that Down Syndrome Association had been awarded was a lot more than I left with. And we were kind of wrapping up at that point, but I really got to sit with it after, and just, I'm so full of gratitude. I learned more about some of the other organizations. I knew quite a bit going in, but getting to hear from these organizations firsthand and seeing the generosity outpour was just something I can't quite describe. But it was a really amazing experience, and I'd recommend it to anybody.
Thanks, Vanessa. Tina, I see you nodding along. Did you want to chime in?
I'm echoing. I'm like, yes, everything that they've said is just amazing. But I think what stood out for me more so was just, learning about these organizations and the fact that, yes, we all do different work, but at the end of the day, we're doing the same things, right? And so what are the areas for collaboration that we can connect with to increase our efficiencies and offer a stronger depth of services to our clients? That's what I walked away just so excited about, that potential. So I'm looking forward to seeing how the philanthropy lens changes in our community over the next few years, and hoping that we can have more of that collaboration.
Thank you. Yeah, there's so much opportunity to collaborate. There's so much people are already doing, but so much more that can be done as well, right? So thank you. It was very, very clear that generosity was overflowing in the room when we met. It was also very clear that there is a lot of stress and challenges facing nonprofits. It seems like there's an increased need in the community and a lot of pressure that people are feeling in a really tangible ways. So one of the questions that the Community Foundation asked in the initial grant application was, how does the pandemic continue to affect your organization? We do have a bar graph with the answers we received, and the slide here shows the responses from all of the organizations who submitted applications. So what we can see here is that over 60% of organizations named volunteer retention, volunteer recruitment, staff burnout, and reduced revenue as affecting operations. Nearly 80% named an increased demand for services, and 86% named effects of inflation. So that really gives you a picture of what folks are experiencing on the ground. At the end of this month, the Community Foundation will be releasing a vital signs report, so stay tuned for that. And that focuses on the charitable sector here in Peterborough and echoes what the grant applicants have reported here. Personally, I'm not surprised at all by this data, but I'm wondering if any of the panelists here would like to comment on some of these elements. Tina, as Director of Philanthropy at the YWCA, you have a very good vantage point when it comes to reduced revenue. Are there observations that you could share with us?
Absolutely. I'm sure it will not come as a surprise that the philanthropy landscape has changed dramatically through and more again since the pandemic. Our individual community donations are down. Our fundraising numbers are under budget by well over $100,000 for this fiscal to date, which is absolutely staggering. The level of this result is unique for us for this year. However, it's not unique to us in the sense that it's impacting the entire community. In a recent report from the Ontario Nonprofit Network, or ONN, through their data gathered over a 4-year period, which encompasses the period that we just went through with the pandemic, we learned that only 17% of nonprofits forecast sustainability over 12 months. When I consider the information that was shared during our granting circle, I really feel that this statistic is fairly relevant in our community. On the other side of this, our costs have and will continue to increase up to an average of 131%. The result of both of these are incredibly alarming numbers. And what that means is that 63% of us working in the nonprofit sector know of a similar organization who is closing or who has ceased operations. And when you consider the depth of services that are provided by the nonprofit sector, and in many cases, these are services that aren't available elsewhere and which are vitally important to the health and well-being of our community, frankly, there's serious cause for concern. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And like you mentioned, and like we can see in the results on the screen as well, at the same time that revenue is down, there's many organizations who applied for grants that are seeing an increased demand for their services. So can you say a bit more about that picture?
Absolutely. So for us, the demand for our services has increased by 76% on average.
Wow.
So what we're feeling is, there's a weight or a heaviness being experienced in our community for the past several years. This is causing stress and anxiety at a level that, frankly, I've never seen before. The result for the YWCA is a shift in the level of severity and complexity for our clients coming to us for assistance. This increases the resources and services required to support a woman through her journey, and it also increases the level of stress and occurrences of burnout for our staff. So on average, back to ONN, they're predicting a 106% increase in demand for services up to the year 2026. So when you factor in our increased costs and reduced revenue with an increase in demand that is predicted to increase by 9% each year up to 2026, frankly, the current model is simply not sustainable.
Yeah, well said. Thank you, Tina, for sharing that. And I know many others in the granting circle were feeling similar pressures. Does anyone else here want to share? Are you all feeling too stressed out? Jason, yeah, jump in.
Yeah, I'll share. So, I mean, it's no secret that people with disabilities already face isolation as a major issue, and the pandemic certainly created some interesting, eye-opening situations, because what happened was, everyone faced the same isolation. In some ways, that created some benefits, because now working from home has become an option, which is creating more job opportunities for people with disabilities, which is great. But there was a lot of stuff that happened. And in Peterborough, we went through a major change with our transit. And that is still affecting the ability for people with disabilities to get to and from locations with ease. Many of my volunteers, because they live with disabilities, are more vulnerable to COVID. So that means that they can't get out and do the volunteer work anymore. They have to, isolate themselves or wear masks, or, because of the variety of health challenges that might be involved. We all know cost of living has gone up. ODSP just in the last year and a half has, seen the largest increase in more than 20 years. And we're still living in poverty and barely making ends meet with regards to the cost of living and cost of food, cost of entertainment, cost of everything else. So creating a more, inclusive and accessible community, it's only going to benefit people, because, it makes a better chance for people to be more included and, hopefully become less isolated.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, Jason. Liz, I see you.
Yeah, so very similar to, but a little different than Jason. Isolation was a big part of why we created this community space. Post-pandemic, one of the things we witnessed with our clients who are struggling with mental health and substance misuse problems is that they're isolated at home. And we know the shape of our streets right now. When they go outside, they are afraid that they're going to run into somebody they used to know and end up where they don't want to be any longer. So part of the reason why we've created this space that we're running is because of the isolation, and people are feeling that deeper because of the pandemic. And so, it's a real struggle in our community post-pandemic.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, Tina, you're the one who said there's the heaviness. And I think that was felt very strongly by everyone at the table. At the same time, and after hearing all this, personally, I feel so grateful and amazed by everyone who continues to do the work that they do in the community. And I know that there was also a lot of hope in the room. I know many of us remain hopeful. Akanksha, would you be able to speak to where you see hope for service users at Elizabeth Fry Society?
Absolutely. Something that's the star of what I feel hopeful about personally is our modular bridge housing program that is so close to being up and running. And I'm sure everybody's already heard about it, but we have about 50 units down at Wolf Street. That is temporary housing for people that are currently unhoused. I'm just so happy that there's something for people to keep them safe in the winter. And just even being in my house, it's so cold. I cannot imagine how traumatizing it would be for people living on the streets. And just we have service users going through a lot of struggles during the winter especially. So I am very, very happy about the modular housing program, and I'm very much looking forward for people to start moving in. And that, I think, is a huge ray of light at the end of the tunnel for us. Something else that I would say is something we look forward to is the development of newer programs. So the entire reason we applied for this grant was to develop online programs for youth. There's very few organizations that cater to youth specifically, especially regarding topics of online safety, healthy relationships, safe sex, anger solutions, emotional regulation. These are all topics that are not touched on a lot in schools, even in the community. There's not a lot of organizations that do that. And there has been an increased need, especially over the last 6 months or so. People have been reaching out, the courts have been reaching out to us to ask if we will provide services for youth. We unfortunately haven't been able to do that so far, but now we are working on developing newer programs that will be available to youth. We are hoping to start off with the online program so it's more accessible for people that go to school all day, that have part-time jobs, and for them to be able to do it at the convenience of their home anytime that they can. that is also something we're looking forward to. So, and even just seeing everybody, meeting everybody through the Grand Circle and seeing all the great work that they're doing. I know that yes, there's an increase in demand. Yes, there are very few resources, but just seeing people that are so passionate about what they're doing and seeing that people are trying their best to support the community, that makes me feel hopeful.
Thanks so much, Akanksha. Yeah, I think you summed it up really well there. Liz, I know we were chatting a bit about hope earlier as well. Would you like to share where you see hope? Oh, you're still on mute. There we go.
So, like, if I could share on any topic, of course, I'd love it to be hope, because I like to think positively. And as I reflected on all that I learned throughout this process, which I learned a lot and I gained a lot, but one of the things that I'm hopeful for is the community foundations of the greater Peterborough area and this vital community fund, to give the power to the people to sit together and make the decisions and relinquish control, which isn't something that's always easy to do. That gave me a lot of hope. You know, in this process, it made us kind of step out of our own shoes and step into each other's. And that's a very refreshing way to approach a funding model. And not only that, it allowed us to witness where all this money, how it will affect our whole community. Because often when you're in these jobs, you only have the ability to look at your own role and your own agency. And so what was refreshing was to collaborate together, hear each other's stories. You keep using the word connection, which I think is a beautiful description of what we were able to do at this granting circle. Our mission here at Right to Heal is to connect the disconnected, because when you feel disconnected, you don't feel like you're not looking at things positively. So this allowed me to look differently at how monies are allocated. And so I want to express gratitude to all of you who participated and to anyone involved in this vital community fund. I am very hopeful for our future of our community.
Thank you, Liz. Yeah, that's great. Would anyone else like to chime in on where they see hope, light on the horizon? Jason.
So CPD has been around it'll be our 35th anniversary next year, actually. And so we're really excited about that. But really only in the last eight or 9 years has CPD become kind of a local name that people recognize for what we do. And it makes me very hopeful, because I can tell you that our programs are now becoming sought after, and people are investing their time and their finances into becoming more aware of accessibility and inclusiveness. Just since October the 11th to now and into December, I'm going to be doing 11 different program deliveries, and so I'm very, very busy, which is a great thing, you know. But you know, during the granting circle, I had Kate from Reframe and Jennifer as well talking about the successfulness of the programs that we had worked with those organizations for. And you know, it makes you feel really, really good to be recognized and to know that the work that you're doing is helping, you know, especially in a situation where the entire facilitation staff is all people with disabilities, and getting recognized for their work and what they do. Because I'll be honest, one of the hardest things I have right now is volunteer retaining and recruitment, because my volunteers keep getting hired out from underneath me. So that makes me very hopeful for the future, because again, we have all of these very gifted individuals who happen to live with a disability, who, because of their work with CPD and doing the facilitation work that they do, are getting recognized for their abilities and are getting the opportunity to becoming, you know, working members of our community. And I think that's a wonderful thing.
Thanks, Jason. That's fantastic. Yeah, that's really wonderful. Tina.
I just wanted to say, you know, I maybe brought a bit of a negative light with my last comment, so I wanted to circle around and say that I'm a positive, hopeful person. But just to expand on that, so from a hopeful perspective, I'm hopeful because from a YW standpoint, the government is finally starting to see that, you know, gender-based violence is an epidemic, and they're starting to recognize that and put some money behind really making some changes. And so I'm certainly very thankful for that from a YW perspective. From a community perspective, the connections and learnings that we received from this granting circle was incredibly empowering. And I am so hopeful by, the stories that I heard from every one of the participants. And I know that we have an incredibly strong group of very passionate leaders out there really stewarding these organizations. And so I'm very hopeful for that. Thank you.
Thank you for adding that, Tina. And thank you for being willing to talk about the very real challenges as well. But you're right, there's always that flip side of hope. So that's great to hear. Before I turn it back over to Jennifer, I want to give another minute if there's anyone else in the audience who is part of the Granting Circle that would like to speak about hope or something else before we wrap up this part of the conversation.
I'm just
Okay.
wondering if I can see Scotty in the audience, and I'm wondering if I can put you on the spot, Scotty. A few years ago, when I first started the Granting Circle, the participatory process, I've always, it's a question I ask, and every Granting Circle actually since, is recognizing that the people from the charities that are in the Granting Circle are themselves representatives in a way, or proxies of the people that they serve, because we're really trying to center those people in the community and really stretch the net as wide as we can. And I asked the question a few years ago, can any of you, they were all staff or EDs, can you imagine one of your service users or clients representing your organization in the Granting Circle? And most of them like, no, we can't. But this year, Dane, the ED from Parn, invited Scotty to participate in the second meeting. And Scotty, you jumped it right in like a duck to water. I'm just wondering if you wanted to share anything about your experience of the circle.
I was, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I was honored just to be a part of the process. It was kind of quick, and I didn't know what I was walking into, but I felt like I was a part of. I was able to share my experience, my strength, my hope, and a little bit about the agency or the group, the KT6 that we work with, and yeah, it was a great experience. Next time I'll know a little better how to respond or to react, and my gratitude was pretty big, by the end of it. I did see, I changed when the distributions, when the money's come out, I could see the change in behavior amongst some of the people that were in this format with us. But yeah, I'm used to that. I've been in different agencies or groups, and yeah, money's important to survive, and fighting to get it is it's a challenge sometimes, but I felt it was it was a good experience. That's what I felt.
Well, really, thank you for being part of it. And yeah, it's a bit of a mystery to everybody. So, but you were very welcome, and we're glad you're part of it. I sort of
Thank you for
interrupted your
sharing.
flow there, Caitlin.
No problem. It's great to hear from everyone. It's always it's always wonderful to be able to learn from people in the community, and today has just continued that learning process for me. So thank you so much to everyone who was willing to speak and share about what's going on in your organizations and your experience with this process. Thank you to all 9 of the organizations that participated in the Granting Circle and were willing to put their whole hearts into this process. It was very much appreciated. So with that, Jennifer, I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks. Great to hear all your thoughts. And in case you missed it, Vanessa's from the Down Syndrome Association of Peterborough, and she was part of the Granting Circle as well. And Scotty was here representing Parn. I love all the hope, and I think that's a nice way to end things. But there certainly one of the things people have been asking me, you've done this Granting Circle so many times, how was this one? And I'm like, it was hard. And the heaviness that Tina spoke of, I felt that was more pervasive than it normally is. And I think I've been reflecting a lot on that in the past few weeks, trying to figure out why I felt that. But I think it really is a sign of the times more than anything. It's certainly not anything to do with the people in the room. I think it's just the external factors, and that graph that had all those things that we shared earlier with burnout and reduced revenue and increased demand, that you could sum that graph up in one word: stress. And I think that's how a lot of people feel. And as Scotty just referenced, when we kind of, the granting circles work, we talk about all the good stuff, and then we get into the money bit, and the dynamic does change a little bit, and the stress becomes more palpable at that point. And I think that's the moment Scotty was speaking to. But I think it was, thank you. I'm very humbled to hear all your comments and feedback on the process, but it really is down to all the organizations doing this great work. We're just the middleman here. So I'm wondering if there's anybody in the audience that has any questions. You can either unmute yourself and jump in, or put something in the chat, or if anybody, I know we've got a few board members with us today. If there's anything you would like to know, and we'll just kind of have a little space there if necessary. All right, well, one of the things that we're doing later this month, in a couple of weeks, we're coming out with a vital signs report. It's a vital focus on the charitable sector. And it speaks to a lot of the things, especially in terms of the challenges and facing the charitable sector at the moment. And maybe not so much about the hope. We'll have to add a whole extra page of hope. But this is just a little, one of the pages, a little snippet from one of the pages. Tina talked about the current model not being sustainable. And for the charitable sector, I think that's really true. We are hearing nationally that donations are down. There are fewer people giving. And that people who are giving, the trend is they're getting older. And so what happens if this trend continues? Peterborough itself is bucking a national average in terms of median charitable donations. It's a generous community that we live in, but even still, the number of people giving has dropped, and that's measured in terms of the number of people who claim their charitable tax deductions on their tax returns. So the Vital Focus report has all sorts of little goodies like this in it, but the real focus is the charitable sector, because it is, I really firmly believe it's essential to all of us. We all have needs that are met by charities in the community, and I really want to hold them up. In National Philanthropy Day today seems like perfect opportunity to recognize the work, the essential work that the charities do, and how we all have a role to play in maybe fixing that model. So it's not just people grateful for a couple of $1,000s here and a couple of $1,000s there. The gratitude from everybody is lovely, but maybe it doesn't have to be that way. Maybe there's a better way, and it's partly inspiring people to be generous and to give to the causes that matter to them. But it's also probably more than that, in terms of like, what is really important in our society and how are we going to pay for it. So I'll leave it on that note. I'm very hopeful every day, just because all of these great people are in the world. So thank you all for coming. You give me hope. And I'll stick around for a couple of minutes if anybody else wants to chat offline. I think there might be a few comments in the chat, but I think they're more encouraging comments. So thank you, Kate and Sheila, for your encouragement. Really appreciate it. Otherwise, I thank you all for coming and spending an hour with us, and take care till next time.
Jennifer, I just want to take this opportunity while I have you here still to thank you and Caitlin so much for stewarding us through this process. It was very powerful. Thank you.
Very, very welcome.
And I echo that. It was a very stressful but humbling process to be part of. And, you know, it always amazes me when you get a group of people together, how, you know, generous we can all be, and you know, how much need there is too. So, but thank you for, you know, walking us through that process.
Thanks for being part of it, Jason. And yeah, yeah, maybe there'll be more money next year, right? That's what I can be hopeful for.
Well, it's been an interesting couple of weeks for me. We had the granting circle, and then a week later, I found out that I'm going to receive a peace medal from the YMCA. So it's been a really, really good month on my end. So I'm quite thankful for all the help here. So
congratulations! That's
thank you.
Great news,
Yeah.
Jason. Wonderful.
So
Congratulations, Jason. That's huge.
it completely caught me off guard. One of my volunteers put my name in, and I'm just quite humbled by the whole experience. So
It's fantastic. Anybody else have any lingering thoughts? I know you're probably wondering where your grants are. The board will be approving them next week, and then the money will flow afterwards. So I know you're not getting any envelopes today, but this is your virtual envelope, and the money, you'll have money before the end of the month for sure. I know that's always a question on people's minds that nobody wants to actually ask. Do you have a question, Liz?
Yeah, I was just gonna say bye, and I hope to connect with all you guys soon. Enjoy the rest of your day.
I'll be
Thanks,
looking for your
take
email.
care. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Liz.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
I'm gonna head
you.
out.
Okay, bye all.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.